and prospects in person? Well, one of the ways that I've been doing it lately is by throwing little events. Um, I feel like right now the best way to get in front of people is to do stuff at existing conferences or to throw little small exclusive meet and greets and mixers. You see a lot of companies that are charging bank right now out there to put together executive dinners and basically bring in sponsors to offset those as underwriters. I've been using one that I really like, but it costs me like $4,000 to $7,000 every single time I want to do an executive dinner, and that can add up pretty fast. Some of the more curated ones can be as high as like 30 grand. So, doing drafting events at existing conferences can be pretty expensive. So, one of the things that I've figured out is you can actually do pretty cool events as a drafting event off like a main conference with a couple of different websites. So, the obvious one is Airbnb, but there's problems with Airbnb. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So the main problem with Airbnb is that you basically are most of the Airbnb properties have rules where you're not supposed to have parties. And then the other big problem with Airbnb is that you essentially have to rent the house for the entire day or at least one night, right? A lot of Airbnbs have minimums, so you can't book them unless you do like a 2-day minimum or a 3-day minimum. And then basically what you end up doing is you're on Airbnb, instant messaging owners to see if you can get around the no events policy or if they'd be willing to let you host an event. And maybe, if you're traveling in from out of state and you want to stay at an Airbnb that night to cut down on cost or use that as kind of your hotel and lodging, then that might make sense. But at the end of the day, Airbnbs can be a non price effective way to do an event, and it's really expensive. And at the end of the day, Airbnb doesn't want people having parties, even if it's business parties. Even if you're an executive and you're just going to have a few people over for dinner, it's still pretty frowned upon. So I've been using a couple of other pretty cool sites. So one is this site called Swimply. So what Swimply is it's essentially for renting pools. But the other really cool part about it is they've kind of expanded outside of pools and moved into tennis courts, basketball courts, and even just backyard spaces. So let me show you a quick way of how I, would go about doing this. So if I wanted to find a pool or a backyard space for a party, I'm just going to put in my current location and not put in any dates. And then if I hit the button, I'll be able to see all the different pools that are in and around the San Diego area. So as you can see, pretty decent coverage of like pools that I could potentially rent. Now, if I don't want to do a pool party or I don't really care about a pool party, I can also actually rent the home itself the same way that you can with Airbnb. I can do pools. I can do pickleball if I want to do like a pickleball event or tennis. And I can also do basketball court. Now, as you can see, they're basically they've kind of custom. At first, this was something that was used a lot during COVID, where people just wanted to people who didn't have a pool just wanted to get access to a pool for a little while. We couldn't go to public pools. That's kind of when this site popped up. And it was a really great option if you just wanted to go and hang at a pool with your friends for a little while. But as you can see, they've really moved into, photo shoots, different sporting events, corporate events, dinner parties. So you've got a lot of additional options here for what you would maybe want to do. So let's just do dinner party as an example. So if I click on the dinner party option, all of these pools and all of these locations are coming up, especially as we're moving into spring and it's going to get warmer. So now I can kind of filter by the way, if I want to kind of filter based on distance and different deals, things of that nature. And I can come in here and start to look at spaces. So this is one that I've actually looked at in the past. It's in Encinitas. It's absolutely amazing. If you think about like how fun would it be to throw a dinner party or a pool party at this space. It's got an ocean view. It's got ping pong and bocce ball all included for $250 an hour. So really great option. Pop in here, and then I can start customizing what I want. So I can put in, do I want the 25 guests are allowed as a standard, parking for up to 4 cars, free cancellation with 3 days. And then when I start to actually, drill down here, you can kind of get a lot of additional options and stuff like that. So $250 an hour, maybe I only need it for 3 hours. And I've got my event done for $750 plus catering for 25 people. You find a local caterer for 25 people, probably you could keep that under $1,000 all in. And now you've got a 25-person event. So a lot of times I'll do these events, I'll have an influencer come as kind of an anchor, and then kind of pitch it as, oh, meet, so-and-so influencer talent, people here from San Diego or from traveling to other markets. So another quick one to show out is this one called PeerSpace. PeerSpace is more targeted to corporate events, but it's more like studio space than studio and office space versus versus like a pool space. But it's also really great for event planning and or studio space. Like I use it a lot of times if I'm traveling to do the podcast, and whoever I'm going to be interviewing doesn't have a space to use in their office or their home, then I'll just grab a cool PeerSpace for a couple of hours, and it makes for a really great backdrop. So I'll just put podcast recording, enter a city, San Diego, anytime. And you can see a bunch of really killer options. So all over San Diego, there are options. There's legit podcast studios that already have, equipment even and lighting. Or if I wanted to go for one of those, this more traditional kind of home style background, but you can see this gets like super interesting and fun. If I want to have like a super, like here's a recording studio, like just great options for wanting to find an interesting backdrop and not super expensive, right? Like I can even go a range of prices if I want to keep the range low. But at the end of the day, I can find a really great space for, not a ton of money. And if I want to just drill on location and kind of focus on places that are, closer up towards me, I can do that as well. So yeah, just wanted to quickly give you guys a couple of options of how to do, how I use these two platforms to figure out how to do events for under $1,000. And it's a great way just to be able to spin up a quick event, not have to, think about some massive dinner or paying like a minimum at a bar or having to pay a ton of money for a private space at a restaurant. A lot of times those guys come with minimums. And at the end of the day, like even if you're tucked back in the corner or in a private room, it can still get loud. So this is a great way to be able to get to do a private event for under $1,000. So if you have any questions,